Hello, children. Welcome to Sunday School. It's good to have you all with me today. Today, we are going to learn about a miracle that was performed in the Bible. It is the miracle of plenty of oil, where the oil in the lady's jar never ran dry. And today, we are learning about God, how he sometimes uses people or us to help other people. So we are going to read our Bible verse, our story that this lesson is about plenty of oil. We are going to 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 to 7. And 2 Kings is found in the Old Testament. And it says this: Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the son of the prophet to Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead. Thou knowest my servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor came to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondsmen. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what do you have in your house? And she said, Thine handmaiden has nothing in the house, save a pot of oil. And he said, Go borrow thee vessels abroad of all of thy neighbors, even empty vessels, and borrow not just a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and thy sons, and thou shalt pour out into all of the vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. And she went from him and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, and brought the vessels to her. And she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her sons, Bring me yet another vessel. And he said to her, There is no vessel more. And the oil stayed. And she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go and sell the oil, and pay the debt, and live thou and the children on the rest. So, in this story, there was a lady, and she had 2 sons, 2 boys. And her husband died. And after he died, there came a knock on the door. And she opens the door and she says, Yes, sir, can I help you? And the man says, Before your husband died, he borrowed money from me, and he owes me. I have come to collect my money. And the lady's like, Sir, I can't pay you. My husband has died. I have no money. So then the man says, Well, you have sons. I can take your sons to be my servants until they pay off the debt. They can work, and instead of me giving them the money, I'll keep the money, and they can work for me until they have worked enough to pay off what is owed. And the lady's like, No, not my sons. Please, not my sons. There has to be another way. And so the man said, Okay, I'll come back in a couple of days, and you either have the money, or I'm going to take your sons to work for me until they earn the money and cover what your husband had borrowed. So the man goes away, and the lady's like, Oh, what am I going to do? And she thought of Elijah. Elijah was the prophet, the preacher to Israel, and she thought of him, and she's like, You know what? I bet Elisha will know what to do. So she goes to Elijah and she says, Elijah, and she pours out the whole story. She tells him, My husband has died. He owed a debt. I have no money to pay. Elijah, what am I going to do? I don't want my sons to be slaves to this strange man. And so Elijah said, Woman, what am I going to do? And then he says, What do you have in your house? What's in your house? She said, I have nothing save a pot of oil. All I have is a pot of oil. So he tells her, You take and go to your house, and you send your sons out and get them to borrow vessels, containers. Get them to borrow all kinds of containers from all of your neighbors. So she sent her sons out to borrow containers. And they borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and borrowed until they had a whole lot of containers. So, do you think this one pot is going to fill this container and this container and this container and this container and this container? Do you think this one pot? For me, it's not going to happen. But there was a miracle in this one pot kept pouring out oil. So she starts pouring, and she pours a jar of oil. And she puts the lid on, and then she gets another jar, and she pours a pot of oil and puts the lid on and sets it away. And then she pours another pot till it's full, puts the lid on and sets it aside. And she keeps doing that over and over and over and over. And her sons are standing there watching her. And she comes to the very last jar. She pours it full, screws the lid on, sets it over and says, "Son, bring me another pot." The son says, "Mom, there are no more pots. We visited every neighbor's house. We've knocked on every door. We've borrowed every empty jug we can find. There's none left." And as soon as that happened, as soon as they said there are no empty vessels left, the oil stopped in the jar. That was the end of it. If there had been one more jar, there would have been one more jar full of oil, but there wasn't one more jar. So the oil stopped pouring. And so then the lady goes to Elijah and says, "I have all of these pots of oil, loads and loads and dozens of pots of oil." And Elijah tells her, "Take the oil and sell it. Sell it for the money that you need to pay back, and you're going to have leftover. You're going to have more than enough to pay back. You're going to have enough to pay back, plus you and your sons to live on." So they went out and they sold all the pots of oil. And so then they are at home one morning, and there comes a knock back at the door. Who do you think that is? That is the man who was owed money coming to collect. He's like, "Ma'am, I've come for my money, or your sons." I think he was prepared to have those sons to be his servants, because it was next to impossible for that woman to have gathered up the money in that short of time. But with God, things aren't impossible. And God was part of this situation. God used Elisha to tell this lady what she needed to do to get out of this situation. He gave her wisdom from God. He gave her a plan of action where she could go and prepare a way so that her children didn't have to become slaves. See, she just kept pouring and pouring. Look at all the different jugs. Every shape, size, didn't matter. She filled them all up. And so God used Elijah for this. And God uses us the same way. He uses our hands to help others. He uses our feet to go places where others are. He uses our mouths, our voices to speak into other people's lives. He uses us to help other people. All right, let's remember our memory verse from last week and go through it again. Do you guys remember this big verse? We talked about some of the words that you might not have known. It says, "But without faith, it is impossible to please him." Remember, we have to believe that there is a God, because without believing that there is, we cannot please him or make him happy. "For he that cometh to God must believe that he is. He is God. He is alive. He is our Savior. And that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him." He rewards us when we seek him with all our heart and soul. He takes care of our needs. That is found in Hebrews 11:6. Let's go through it one more time. "But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Hebrews 11:6. So remember, we must believe that God is. He is God. His name is Jesus. We must believe that. That is the number one step to pleasing God. And we must believe that when we are doing what is right, we are following his word, we are seeking him, that he will reward us. Just like he stepped in for this lady when it seemed the situation was not fixable, when it seemed impossible, this lady sought God. This lady depended on God. And so God rewarded her for that. When you diligently seek God, he will reward you. He will show up in your life in ways that you may not have even imagined. All right, that is the end of our lesson for today. Remember, seek God. He will show up. He will reward you. You have to believe there is a God. His name is Jesus. He is my God. He is my Savior. And God will reward those who diligently seek him. And remember, God uses us to help others. Just like he did Elijah. God didn't come down and tell the lady, pour oil into jars. No, Elisha, I keep wanting to say Elijah. Elisha came down and told that lady to pour oil into jars. He was the one that did it. So when God gives you words to speak to other people, we need to speak those words, because that's God using us to help other people. And when you see someone who is hurting or someone having a bad day, encourage them. Tell them that you love them. Tell them something to encourage them to make their day better. Smile at them. Ask them, are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? And that is touching lives. That is God using you to touch the lives of others. All right, that is our lesson for today. And I will see you again next week. Love you all. Thank you so much for coming. Bye-bye.